Hello there! Welcome back to another Star Wars What If reaction. Today, we're reacting to What If Anakin had a secret child before the Clone Wars, created by Pente Patrol Star Wars. Be sure to check him out, the link's in the description, and I cannot wait to see what he's come up with for this What If. Let's jump right in.
Hello. Our
Hello.
story begins in the medical chambers of the Jedi Temple.
Okay.
The Clone Wars were only a few weeks fresh to the galaxy.
Oh, okay.
A medical droid turned to Master Sindralik and informed him that it was a match. He was puzzled by this, stepping towards the droid and looking at the screen before him. His eyes scanned the information and he paused. He pressed his hand to his chin and looked back towards the child inside of the incubator. He expressed his thanks to the droid before leaving the medical chambers and making an
I'm gonna assume that there's like a child that I don't know, Sindralik is like testing, and I don't know, the DNA is like the same as Anakin's or something.
unplanned visit to the High Council chambers. They were in the middle of a session. They were still adjusting to the warlike period, so they were actually running a little bit later than usual. All voices stopped and everyone's eyes moved to the center of the room where Sindralik stopped. The council would have typically had an issue with anyone stopping their discussions, but being that it was their battle master, they quieted down and listened. He informed them that a child was delivered on the steps of the Jedi Temple. Someone from the lower levels had given birth to a child and died in labor. Before their death, they informed the medics that the father was a Jedi. While this wasn't the first time this happened, the Jedi always checked the midichlorian count and the genetics of the child to ensure that they weren't that of a Jedi. If they weren't, which was 99% of cases, they would be handed over to the appropriate orphanages. But this was not one of those circumstances, as Sindralik informed the council that
Anakin did some frisky stuff in the lower levels.
It was the child of Anakin Skywalker. They looked to each other in confusion. Some of the eyes in the room lingered on the new member, Master Kenobi. One of the Jedi asked how this could be, and Sindralik explained that when a mommy loves a daddy, but in all seriousness, the Battle Master explained that he would approach Anakin about this and get more information from him regarding the child. The Jedi looked to each other and Yoda asked for the M count from the child, and he spit out a number that got a very visual reaction from the rest of the council. 21,000?
What? 21,000? Isn't that like higher than Anakin's? Anakin's like around 20,000, 20,000, 23,000 or something like that.
That was unbelievable. Anakin wasn't a virgin in the Force for no reason, but still. Sindralik bowed so that he may exit, and the council's discussion shifted rapidly around the discovery of this child.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Anakin's is like 23,000 and Luke and Leia's were like 21,000.
It could mean for the Order. Master Sindralik would spend several minutes searching for Skywalker, eventually locating him inside of one of the many training halls within the temple. When he walked in, Skywalker didn't even notice. He was batting his lightsaber against a number of training droids, spinning, flipping, and blocking where he could. Sin stopped and admired the work that Anakin was putting in, and he waited until the Jedi Knight finished his training regiment. As the minutes passed by, he found how seriously Anakin had started taking his training after stepping into the role of Knight. Regardless of Sin's own opinions about Anakin's decision to take his training seriously without Obi-Wan, he asked for a moment to speak with him. Skywalker used the
This is gonna get hot real quick.
to wipe his face as he agreed, and the two of them exited the training room, stepping through the hallway about 5 to 10 paces and out of an adjacent door that led to an overseen balcony on the temple. Sindralik told Anakin that he was the father of a beautiful child, one without a name. This obviously was very shocking for Anakin, because he believed that this conversation would be about his training. He asked Sindralik if he was in trouble. The Battle Master noted how Anakin's first concern was his own trouble, not the well-being of the child or the mother. So
yeah, that's kind of...
he stepped towards Anakin, expressing that it depended. Sindralik informed Skywalker that the Jedi Order was not a celibate order. They were one who held their own values regarding such actions or lack thereof. But celibacy or lack of it was not what determined who was a Jedi. That was determined through their emotional attachment. So he asked Skywalker who the mother was. Anakin was stumped. He didn't really know. After he turned 18, he sneaked off into the Coruscant Club.
He didn't know. How many times has he done stuff?
Long missions. He also did it when he was 16 and 17. Mostly because he looked old enough to pass for 18 in his own mind.
That's...
But he said that he didn't know who the mother was. Sindralik asked if there were any attachments to the mother. Anakin laughed a little, and when Sinjalik's face didn't change, he straightened his back and expressed seriously that he didn't even know who she was to begin with. If it was this instant, he could probably pick the face out of the crowd, but he never shared names, so he didn't know their name. And people also never shared
He
their
didn't even know the name.
names with him. It made things simpler. Sindralik shrugged his shoulders. Okay, cool, no biggie. He told Anakin where to find the child if he wished to meet them. If not, he may continue his training. Master Dralik bowed and stepped towards the door they walked out of, before stopping and turning his head slightly and telling Anakin to watch that hitch in his upper left shoulder. It would expose him in another contest with a talented duelist. His recommendation was patience with the strike. In the heat of the moment, it felt like patience wouldn't bring him success. But patience, in the elegance of the saber's flow, is what he needed. Anakin smiled.
That's always what
the
Kenobi
Jedi
told him.
Master once more, before turning back and looking out over the sea of buildings in the Ecumenopolis. Wow, he was a father. That's crazy. Then a cold sweat caught his body in a whirlwind. What would he tell Padme? Would she be understanding? Anakin eventually decided that he would visit the child first because he was truly curious, and he was hopeful to read the report about the mother of the infant. When he got to the medical bay, he found that the mother had tragically passed away.
Wow.
And the child was sent here because she claimed that the father was a Jedi. It was especially weird because Anakin never told her that, but the Jedi outfit must have been the sign. He did feel truly bad about the way things turned out, but he couldn't help but see the beauty in having this baby. He didn't want to form an attachment, but he almost couldn't help himself. He read the report next to the incubator where his child
Bro,
slept.
we already formed an attachment with Padme. What the fuck does it matter?
And every couple minutes his eyes would drift off the report and down to the baby, then back to the report and eventually down to his child. He couldn't help himself. But before something tore him away from the Jedi Order, he decided to walk out of the room. His attachment to Padme was more than enough. He couldn't risk anything more than that. After he stepped out of the room, he walked into Mace Windu, who asked if he was doing alright with all the news. Anakin nodded his head. He was a little shaky on it, but Mace didn't think too much of it. He simply acknowledged Anakin's unease and told him that he shouldn't worry. This was natural for Jedi who accidentally had themselves an infant. He needn't worry, though.
Okay.
The Order was fully capable of handling this. Mace was subtly trying to suggest that Anakin not form an attachment to the child.
Interesting.
Because he was aware of Yoda's plan to give Ahsoka to Skywalker in the coming months. However, he would make a note of Anakin's unease to the Grand Master, just so that Yoda knew all the details about the Jedi he was going to give Ahsoka to. Skywalker, on the other hand, had himself another joyous and awkward conversation ahead of him. He, after a normal day, would sneak off to Padme's residence to inform her of the recent developments. He was worried that something terrible would come from it, but truthfully, she didn't really care. Initially, she was concerned that he had cheated, but it was fairly impossible for him to have done that since the child was already born.
Yeah.
It takes a little more than like a month or two for
Yeah, it takes 9 months.
a child to be born. Padme was worried for him, though. Having a child at 19 wasn't the easiest burden in the galaxy. She understood that it was an accident, and that there were no feelings involved. But it also happened before their relationship, so why would she care? She would expect him to feel the same about her previous relationships. They were in the past, done and over with.
Oh, yeah, because he definitely didn't care about Rush Clovis, you know?
Padme just had one question. What was he going to do about the child? He didn't know, honestly. He said that he thought about giving a baby a name, but that was about it. She didn't encourage or discourage anything. This was his decision, and she was willing to support whatever one he made. But she did make him aware that it would be very difficult on both of them if the child was taken out of the Order, something that logistically couldn't happen. In other words, she'd take care of the child while he'd keep going on the campaign. Anakin agreed. He believed that he wouldn't have trouble naming the child, just leaving them be. He could continue with his life and allow the infant to grow up as a youngling without any worries regarding attachment and whatnot.
Okay.
Padme thought that was a sound idea. However, she was curious on one more thing. What kind of name was he going to give the baby? He thought of a couple. The first name was Destiny, because his pod racer was called Destiny's Favorite after the Boot to Eve classic. The other two names he picked because he happened to like the sound of them, those being Hayden and Nikita. She tapped her
Hayden. Hayden Christensen.
chin and suggested Nikita, believing it was a fitting name. He asked why, and she expressed that in some languages it meant unconquerable. She believed that was a fitting name for the child of a Jedi and a deceased mother. Anakin would go forth and request that his child's name be made Nikita,
Okay.
without a middle name or without a last name. He promised himself that he wouldn't get attached. The Jedi of the Council did keep a close eye on this. The biggest reason for their interest was Yoda's and Obi-Wan's side project that involved giving Anakin the youngling Ahsoka Tano. If he was capable of shedding his emotions around his baby, then he would be the perfect instructor for Ahsoka.
Okay.
The worst part is, Anakin gave his baby a name. Nikita was on his mind frequently. If he was at the temple or on the front lines, he wondered if his kid was doing alright.
Okay.
He didn't understand where this possessiveness came from, like it was never there to begin with. Maybe it was because his mother had died shortly before and he was looking for someone to hold on to, or if it was a natural bond between father and child. He didn't really know. But the longer he was away, the more his heart hurt, and when he returned from the battlefront, the first thing he did was check on Nikita. Without fully understanding or comprehending why, he loved her. She was
Yeah, it definitely looks like he's getting attached to this child. Actually, he already is attached to the child.
his daughter, and he wanted the galaxy for her. He checked on her consistently, despite the temple offering up some of the best childcare facilities in the entire galaxy. The Order was prepared for any circumstance, and there was no reason for Anakin to be concerned with how Nikita would turn out. But he was. He would sometimes stroll into the incubator room in the middle of the night and cradle her and talk to her like she could understand him. He would tell her about dreams and aspirations. He would promise her the future made of her own choices and her own decisions. He expressed his belief that she would rise above the Order and lead them through their heaviest challenges, because at the end of everything, she had the opportunity he didn't.
Yeah, come on. He's already formed an attachment.
Anakin understood that Nikita would be everything the Jedi wanted. The powerful, Force-sensitive child born of the Chosen One, trained from birth and without attachment. Perhaps that was the greatest burden on Anakin's mind. It was the fact that he couldn't and wouldn't remove his daughter from the Jedi Order, because he and Padme couldn't support her without leaving her in the hands of droids. At least here, inside the Order, the caregivers spent their days with the infants, formed human connections, before releasing the children into their younger care classes. This for Anakin was the deepest cut of them all. The more he fell in love with his child, the more he realized that it would never be possible for them to form a true connection. The burden wasn't hers to carry, and as her father, he believed that it was his alone to bear. Despite Anakin being relatively quiet about his connection to this child, the Jedi were slowly becoming more and more aware of the attachment.
I mean, they're gonna notice eventually, you know?
He was forming. It wasn't enough of an attachment to force him from the Order, because what he was doing wasn't jeopardizing anyone else. But Yoda decided that after weeks of this natural attachment forming, that Ahsoka would go to Master Kenobi.
Okay.
While an argument could be made that the Jedi could step up and tell Anakin not to, the Council and especially Yoda understood that it wouldn't stop anything. They could tell Anakin to stop seeing his daughter or to stop forming an attachment to her, but what good would that do? Forcing an individual to cease
That wouldn't really do any good.
would lead to them giving up and following the same path down the line with a different individual, or at least the Council's interpretation of Dooku's turn. Yoda was left in a weird predicament, because there were counselors who suggested breaking up this little connection, but he didn't believe that it was the right thing to do. Anakin would remain attached regardless of their interjection or not, and he would form another attachment of such magnitude with Ahsoka if they gave Ahsoka over to him.
Yep.
Yoda understood who Anakin was, and decided that the best path forward was to be patient. Anakin knew he wasn't supposed to be doing this. It might wear on him in the coming weeks. In the meantime, it was up to Master Kenobi to use his own bond with Skywalker to dissuade him from continuing down this path. It was a very delicate position, because Obi-Wan was closest to Anakin. He could talk to him about Nikita and how it was time for him to allow her to develop within the training of the Jedi Order.
Okay.
The idea was for Anakin to form a Jedi bond, like the ones shared between Master and Apprentice, because they were based in Jedi values, controlled by the code they all shared. Attachments outside of the code were based in the potential of selfishness and greed. This direction could lead to making mistakes and decisions that could impact the lives of others through their own attachments. Yoda believed wholeheartedly that Anakin would make a strong instructor for Ahsoka.
I mean,
It was
yeah,
in this
he did.
belief that Anakin would grow into the Jedi the Council all believed he was capable of becoming. But Obi-Wan's reports from his discussions with Anakin were furthermore disheartening. Kenobi didn't lay it on hard or anything, but he suggested that he'd take his mind off Nikita, or that he start thinking about the instruction of another Jedi, even slipping in the potential of training Nikita in the future as a Jedi Master, but not even that worked. Technically speaking, Jedi were not permitted to train their own children, nor were they allowed to train younglings that they brought into the Order.
Interesting.
But Obi-Wan was focusing on Anakin's personality traits. Skywalker was much more likely to think about short-term results rather than long-term planning. It's why he suggested that he could train Nikita in the future, hoping that Anakin would get it in his mind and then slowly forget about her, allowing them both to grow into the Jedi in their own respective ways.
Okay, interesting.
Anakin could become a master with Ahsoka,
It's kind of like mind games.
and eventually train Nikita. Obviously, Kenobi never said Ahsoka by name, but the idea of training and then training just never really did it for Anakin. He just continued to reject the ideas, which deeply saddened Obi-Wan. But this did mean that Ahsoka went to Master Kenobi as his second student, something that Anakin would have to live with. Initially, it was something that didn't bother him, because a lot of his thoughts were on the present, in other words, Nikita. He lived very actively in the current moment and in the past. But what he couldn't foresee was the jealousy that started to grow within him. He couldn't blame anyone but himself, but seeing the bond that formed between Obi-Wan and Ahsoka made him wish that he had adhered to Kenobi's advice. He felt disconnected, and as the war continued to heat up, he continued to get pushed further away from his daughter. This absolutely destroyed his heart, and he longed for the chance to return to Coruscant to see her and Padme. But therein lay the problem. He hadn't fully grasped what Obi-Wan was trying to say.
Where's this heading?
Now with reality facing him, he searched for his own answers abroad. It wasn't to say that he and Ahsoka didn't get along, but their relationship was much different than the one that naturally formed between her and her actual master. Plus, Obi-Wan and Anakin weren't with each other for every single battle. Because of these confusions, when Anakin returned to Coruscant, he readdressed his concerns to Palpatine. Of course, by this point his mentor knew about Nikita, because he was one of the first people he told after Padme. But much of the emotional turmoil that followed months of campaigns across the galaxy, it left Anakin looking for a solution. Obi-Wan had given him some options, Padme some more unique options, and now he was here with Palpatine asking him for ideas on the topic. It was during this conversation where Palpatine would suggest that Anakin take his daughter and leave the Order, but it was said in a joking way, testing the waters if you will.
Okay.
While Anakin thought it was a good joke, he did believe that Nikita at the very least should remain a Jedi. The teachings provided by the Order were some of the best in the galaxy, and Anakin firmly believed that. He was just emotionally troubled, and he kind of got an idea that the Council wasn't going to give him a chance to be a teacher because of his attachment to his daughter. Palpatine, of course, used this as a means to pump more illusions into Anakin's mind.
Great, so now Palpatine is going to use this to advantage to manipulate Anakin more.
However, this conversation also got some more integral information out of it for Palpatine. By this point, there had already been a holocron heist and so on the Temple, but the Dark Lord of the Sith, sitting innocently in the power of the Chancellor, was able to learn more about this daughter. He learned her M count and her sensitivity to the Force, as of so far into her career.
Oh, great.
She was highly attuned, and a big reason Anakin wanted her to remain a Jedi was because of the attention she got from caregivers. This assisted her with developing her abilities sooner so that they could set her up with the appropriate classes once she was of age. This to Palpatine was very intriguing. Why spend his time trying to seduce Skywalker to the dark side when there was a perfectly good pawn already in the making? As they were talking...
Oh, God. Oh, this is like... This is going into a bad direction.
Sidious's mind was churning. He saw many potential positives out of the situation. He broke it down like this. In Scenario 1, he abducts Skywalker's daughter, hides her away in a safe location, or multiple, then trains her and turns her to the dark side before she's even coherent enough to think for herself.
Wow.
At the same time, Anakin could become frustrated with the Order and turn on them. Eventually, Palpatine and Nikita would have to destroy Vader, because his power would be too much for just any one of them. But that was a potential route. In another scenario, he does the same abduction, but Anakin does not turn against the Jedi. He wouldn't have to worry about a future apprentice, because Nikita would already have spent 2 or so years with him under his influence.
God.
These were 2 very likely options. Of course, there were others where he didn't take her, or he hid her on Coruscant and used Dooku as a lens to force Anakin down the darker path, or even a scenario where Dooku fakes killing Nikita for
Dude,
Anakin
how many possibilities is Sidious thinking of? This is crazy.
to lose his mind and kill Dooku. So many remarkable possibilities, all of them leading to one outcome: Palpatine's triumph. That was all that mattered in the end to him. With Anakin sent away feeling distasteful towards the Jedi once more, and reconsidering his approach to his relationship with Nikita and the Order, Palpatine prepared his own leg of his own plan.
Okay.
Due to so many options running through Anakin's mind, he was able to dwell on it after returning for another campaign. For about 3 weeks, he'd be entrenched in combat on back-to-back days at a time. This was very intentional on Sidious's part. He knew Skywalker wouldn't have the time to weigh his options, and while he was gone, locked in campaign with the Separatists, news broke to him within a combat arena. His daughter had been stolen from the Jedi Temple.
What?
Bereft of a reaction, he slowly became filled with rage. He was stuck out here, and someone else had broken into the temple to steal his own daughter.
Nah.
His mind went to Dooku first, and second to Cad Bane.
Right, and how would Dooku know though, Anakin? How would Dooku know Anakin? See, Anakin, like you arrogant monkey, man. How would Dooku know?
Because he was the only person to break into the temple. And not for nothing, the only individual who could possibly know about this child had to be Dooku. For the meantime, Anakin would have to remain active on the front line of combat until it cleared up enough and he could make his way back to Coruscant. When he did return to the temple, he was disappointed with the lack of results coming from the Jedi Council. They had investigators all over it, but never in their history had anyone broken into their infant wing and stolen one child.
That's crazy.
Anakin was
Hold up. I have a theory here. Maybe Sidious seduced the Grand Inquisitor earlier, you know? That one Jedi Temple guard. And, you know, utilized that to steal Anakin's daughter.
Frustrated as he stood in the center of the council chambers. His eyes darted to each of the counselors present, or on hologram, before asking them how they could let this happen twice. They did understand his frustrations, but this approach to them wouldn't bring Nikita back any sooner. Anakin stopped his swaying and looked to Master Yoda, telling him that he would go and find her and bring her home. Yoda believed this was a bad idea, seeing Anakin's attachment in full force working against his logic. If he went, it could bode badly for everyone involved, especially
True.
his child. Master Seisetin from the corner of the room spoke up, telling the Grand Master that he would be willing to accompany young Skywalker on the mission to retrieve his daughter.
Okay.
It was imperative that they find her before the Sith influenced her down the wrong path. Yoda nodded with a frustrated expression. Master Seizi was right, but he didn't want to send Skywalker. However, he would agree to it. Anakin was surprised.
You know, maybe they should guard the Jedi Temple better now, because if they can just steal a Jedi youngling from the temple now, then that's pretty bad.
This move by Seizi, but it was something he was very grateful for. The two Jedi would depart for the temple very quickly following the rest of the council session, where Yoda and Mace would assign them instructions. Inside the Jedi shuttle, the two of them would discuss strategy, potential locations of interest, and rationale behind Seizi's decision. His rationale wasn't as personal as Anakin would have hoped, but basically, Seizi knew Skywalker was going to do it, regardless of what the council said. So he figured, why not get in on the action and assist where he could?
Okay.
May have not been the best reasoning ever, but Anakin was glad to have an ally with him. This would pull the two Jedi Masters away from combat for months. Luckily for Anakin and Seizi, their units were combined into one larger version of the 501st under Commander Rex. It was a simple little switch that wasn't very difficult to manage. And on top of that,
now it's Commander Rex because Ahsoka isn't there. That's cool.
Very successful, even without Jedi leadership. Tin and Skywalker would start their hunt in the Outer Rim, scanning for bounty hunters that had been to the core and to Coruscant. While they could have initially gone with cantinas inside the Ecumenopolis itself, they figured that was too basic. Nikita's capture came from the Sith, someone who valued her power. If it was just a basic steal from a bounty hunter, then it was a coincidence. But something like this couldn't be coincidence.
Yeah.
They found hints and potential targets, but nothing got them closer to saving Anakin's daughter. She was lost amongst the stars, and it started to take a toll on him. Skywalker grew his hair out longer, and it was very unkempt. He had scraggly, patchy facial hair, and he looked like the scum of the underworld. Seizi became a brother-like figure to Anakin during this time. His decision to join him on this quest really brought him ease. Without Seizi, he knew he would have struggled immensely. The continuous dead ends left him feeling hopeless, and worst of all, it didn't come from Cad Bane, though he was paid off to conceal what little he knew.
I see.
Cad knew that there was a mysterious figure named Sidious, who paid for information on the interior of the temple from his holocron heist. Anakin and Stacey used the Force aggressively to coax the answer out of Cad Bane, but still...
Oh, I remember that scene from the Clone Wars when Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Windu used the Force like super aggressively on Cad Bane to get information on him, and they almost broke him, man. It was crazy.
Real answer. Though, with the revelation that Sidious himself was behind the capture, the Council deployed duos to find Nikita.
Okay.
Kun and Kit Fisto, Mace Windu and Eth Koth, as well as Ki-Adi-Mundi and Adi Gallia. But this again wouldn't result in any finds. Sidious was well aware of this hunt for the child, and without knowledge of Bane's information extraction, he was left to assume that it happened anyways. He continued moving Nikita from location to location to ensure her secrecy.
Damn,
Dooku
bro.
and Sidious used rituals to submerge her mind into darkness.
That's
so
crazy.
that the teachings of the Jedi would be ripped from her. But the constant movement wasn't helping anyone with getting further along. The Sith definitely took the most advantage from it, but luckily for the Jedi, Anakin and Stacey went in on a covert op mission inside of Castle Sereno.
Oh.
The two of them would land on the planet and secretly sneak into the castle and search for the documents within Dooku's drive. He was currently out following the destruction of Dathomir.
That's
the two
crazy.
Jedi worked quickly, with R2 going deep into the computer to find that they had a continuous rotation of Sith movement with the child. They stopped at Sith homeworlds across the galaxy, but always eventually ended up on Coruscant. This cycle also continued every few weeks. It was a varying pattern. 2 weeks for a full rotation between each and every planet, then 3 weeks for the same thing, and then 1 week for the same thing. The Jedi had to go though, forcing them to make a copy of the documents and bring them with them into their shuttle, so they could analyze it more, dating all the way back to the first week Nikita had been stolen, and then find out where she was. Anakin and Stacey went around and around, counting up the numbers as they sat in hyperspace, before coming to the conclusion that Dooku had been transporting Nikita from Coruscant to Mustafar. The two Jedi were moving to the closest fleet in the area, so they course-corrected and moved straight for Mustafar. When they arrived, they rushed in. Sidious was in contact with Tyrannus, informing him of something regarding a Sith plan, and right as he was about to finish, two sabers ignited, as Stacey and Anakin split around the new refinery complex on Mustafar. Anakin looked at his daughter. There were black marks across her face. They weren't wounds, but drawings. She had gotten much bigger since the last time he had saw her, and rage rose from within him. Stacey lifted his hand and patted down, as if to tell Anakin to not do it. Sidious ended the call with Tyrannus, as Dooku, fresh after arriving home, got back onto his shuttle and departed for Mustafar, just in case his master needed him. The Dark Lord of the Sith looked at the two Jedi, telling them that they never should have come, and Anakin responded.
Anakin is not close to being at the point where he could like challenge Sidious. And I'm sorry, but Stacey Tin is not a very big challenge for Sidious, so they're screwed, and Dooku's incoming as well.
Twisting his saber in his hand, explaining to Sidious that he shouldn't have taken his daughter. Two Sith lightsabers ignited, and he smiled, looking at his two targets. Stacey and Anakin moved in, swinging their weapons at Sidious. He blocked them both, held it for a moment, laughed at them, and swung back, using his speed to avoid their counters as he slipped off a table in the center of the room and used the momentum to drive himself between the two Jedi.
I wonder if Sidious keeps his hood on for his disguise to not be undisguised.
Anakin was free game now. With Nikita here, she was the future apprentice. Shame on Skywalker for not seeing the writings on the wall. He had a future with the Sith, but no more. Their weapons smashed into each other as Palpatine ducked and weaved between the Jedi. Anakin got to Stacey's side and parried Palpatine, as Tin lunged in, ducking and countering upwards. Palpatine swept his saber down, and Stacey lifted over Palpatine, flipping and landing as Skywalker drove in. Their blades connected, 2-on-1.
I mean, they don't necessarily have to lose, but they're not winning.
Anakin's attack, but he struck at each blade, keeping up in pace, as Stacey slipped into the engagement, driving his saber at Palpatine, who perfectly countered, before leaping back and holding himself above the Jedi. Sidious planned on dividing and conquering, so he told Anakin what he was going to do to his beloved Nikita. Sidious continued going further and further with his words, and Skywalker ripped the table in half, with the Force forcing Palpatine to leap over the Jedi as Anakin rushed in, slapping his saber down erratically, giving Sidious clear blows and strikes.
Come on, take the hood off.
Skywalker, but it was stopped by Saesee, who kept these rancid attacks at bay. Anakin didn't even notice. He was here to kill the Sith Lord, and as he got closer to landing a strike, a team of clone troopers rushed in and they started firing their blasters at the red lightsaber.
Ooh.
Palpatine leapt away, using the Jedi as a shield, and Anakin slipped behind Saesee and rushed over to his daughter's incubator, getting in front of it, using the Force to bust the floor beneath Palpatine. He was trapped, and the Republic had sent the Jedi reinforcements. Saesee covered the front as he lunged in, blasting away at Sidious, who swung back aggressively, but he was unable to defeat Palpatine. More blasters fired, and Anakin grabbed his daughter from the incubator and stepped away, making sure to keep her from harm's way.
This is epic.
Sidious saw this as an opportunity. If he couldn't have her, then no one could.
Oh.
He ducked away, blasting electricity at the clones, killing a few, those who weren't saved by Master Tim. Sidious drove his weapon back in for Anakin, who blasted back at it with a defending strike before being pierced in the side by Palpatine's saber.
Oh shit.
He fell back, shielding his daughter from harm as he wheezed in pain. Saesee cut through Palpatine's shoulder, removing an entire arm in the process.
What?
As Sidious launched the Jedi Master across the room. The clones opened fire as they clipped Palpatine once, but he was able to lunge at them. As he got close, his saber raised, and it was stopped by Anakin. Sidious looked back as the stock of a DC-15 rifle busted him in the face, and he stumbled over. And as he did, he was pelted from behind, before Saesee swung up with one strike to end his life with the removal of his head.
Shit.
The clone medic ran over to Skywalker to see if he was alright.
They actually got him.
He was busy cradling his daughter, asking if she was alright. They would help him out of the facility, and upon their return to the light cruiser, they would hear turbo cannons firing, them being the shots that killed Dooku. Anakin would receive his healing before returning to
shit,
Coruscant,
Dooku's dead.
where he'd be presented with a chance to become a Jedi Master. Saesee saw Anakin's actions on Mustafar as heroic. He saved the clones, his daughter, and of course, helped Master Tin defeat the Sith. He believed that those were attributes worthy of a Jedi Master. However, Anakin decided that he would be withdrawing from the Jedi Order.
What?
He initially planned on allowing Nikita to remain a Jedi, but he believed that that wouldn't be the right decision. So, they were both stepping away. The Council was absolutely shocked, but they understood why he made such a decision. His brotherhood to Saesee would remain intact as Anakin stepped away from the Order for good. His life inside of Padme's residence would be fine. Padme had very long workdays, but
he
she
helped
came to
defeat the
love
Sith.
Nikita Skywalker too. The power dynamics in the galaxy shifted, with Palpatine and Dooku vanishing, but the Jedi, even with the truth, would remain silent about it. They knew the public would blame them, even though it wasn't their fault. Instead, without the Sith, a natural peace talks were able to occur, ones that took quite a while to finish out, but came nonetheless.
Okay.
A few years following the end of the Clone Wars, and Anakin's retirement from the Jedi Order, he'd be living on a peaceful life with Padme on Coruscant. The two of them hadn't had any children together, as of yet, and Nikita was coming around to the age of 7 years old.
Okay.
She was showing signs of the Force, and very much so her father's daughter. Not that anyone knew what her biological mom was like. Anakin's work life was much simpler than saving the galaxy. He was a pod race promoter, being responsible for getting a race course started in the industrial sector of Coruscant.
That's cool.
Called the Old City Circuit. It was very popular and he made big bank off of it. Not quite as much as his Chancellor wife, but nothing beats
Chancellor, okay, damn.
Obi-Wan, Saesee, and many of the clones would remain very close to Anakin over these coming years. And with big bucks he pulled in from being a promoter, he was able to take them out for pod racing nights instead of luxury suites with his family.
That actually sounds so fun.
Nikita had as many uncles as there were stars in the sky, and she couldn't be happier. She knew how to be a mechanic, but Anakin wanted her to be much more than she could ever dream of. At the current moment, that was a princess. But that wasn't exactly out of the question in a galaxy far, far away. In years to come, she would have younger siblings, especially being that Anakin and Padme could retire by the time they hit 30. They didn't, but they were financially stable enough to do it if they wanted to. With the Clone Wars long over and the Sith finally defeated by Kenobi and Ahsoka, the new era of galactic leadership looked sound. Padme had re-established strength of the Republic and democracy, thanks to help from Mina Bonteri and Satine Kryze. After stepping down from her role as Chancellor, instead of going for re-election, Padme set the golden standard for the new era of Republic.
Okay.
What mattered to her was public service on a smaller scale and spending time with the loves of her life. And that, my friends, is a pretty wholesome PP story.
Wow, that is a pretty damn wholesome story, and I will give that what if a 8 out of 10. Am I doing too many 8 out of 10s now? Maybe? I don't know though, but this is an 8 out of 10 for the story. Really good story. Once again, a very wholesome story, very light side ending. I mean, at one point though, I thought this story was gonna just go to hell and just go dark side. I thought that, but it did not, and I like how we just switched around. So, yeah, great story about PPSW. Once again, 8 out of 10. Let me know what you guys would rate the story out of 10 in the comment section down below, whether you agree with my 1 out of 10 rating or 1 out of 10. I mean, 8 out of 10 rating, or if you don't, and why.
Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this reaction, make sure to go subscribe to Pente Patrol Star Wars for more awesome What If content. And do not forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an upload. Remember, a new Star Wars What If reaction drops every single day. Join our Discord, the links in the description. Also, if you want to support the channel and get exclusive perks, consider joining our Patreon. Huge thanks to all of our amazing patrons for your support. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this video, so drop a comment with feedback or let me know which What If I should react to next. Thanks again for watching. This is Dwayne for Review, and then I'll see you next time. Hey, you didn't watch it? Well, check out the video on the left side of the screen, which is specifically recommended for you, or check out the playlist on the right of the screen, which contains similar videos to this one, made by me, of course. Hey, remember, subscribe.